Hello and welcome to Finextra. I'm Emily Horler and I'm here with Chris Sier of FiNexus, and we're at the UKTI and Finextra Copenhagen event. Thanks very much for joining me.
You're welcome.
So, in the conference you painted a bleak picture of the future of banks. Do you really believe this?
Both yes and no. I think if they continue the way they're going, then things will be pretty bleak for them. And by the direction in which they're going, I mean it's not embracing innovation, not embracing change, looking at it, watching it, but not genuinely adopting it. That's what I mean. I think, yes, they do have problems. But fundamentally, the problems for banks are based upon the fact that a bank is really nothing more than a credit creation mechanism. It takes our short-term savings and it multiplies them up and changes their duration and makes credit. So when someone comes for a mortgage, it's predicated on the fact that you have cash deposits somewhere over there. And if those cash deposits are not being put through a bank, because we're using peer-to-peer mechanisms to pay each other and to invest and save, then this means the banks don't have the fundamental cash deposits upon which they can create credit. And so we end up with a credit crisis or a liquidity crisis, which is not helpful. The other reason it's not helpful is if money is not going through the banking system, it's going through peer-to-peer mechanisms, it's using blockchain, Bitcoin, whatever you want to describe it as, decentralized ledger mechanisms. What you end up with is also a lack of control. It's a form of shadow banking. It means the regulator can't see it, and again, this is extremely distasteful for the regulator because they can't track where the cash is going. So we have some fundamental problems for banks. But banks are a bit more, I think, than credit creation mechanisms, and as soon as they realise that, then that's when their market will evolve. They are actually very good networks. They have a captive network that other organisations would beg for. When you're a startup, you want to get access to lots of customers. A bank is a network, it's a node. And so therefore, once they start to evolve, the next stage of evolution is to realise that they have this network, this captive market. But then we get into the next point, is once we have evolved into a pure peer-to-peer framework, we end up in a position where, sadly, banks' raison d'etre also disappears because the nodes that they are become fragmented. A bank is a node, and we create mesh networks, we create very, very interconnected networks through peer-to-peer frameworks, and the need of banks disappears. So actually, what is going to be the function of the bank in the distant future? Well, I believe the function of a bank in the distant future is going to become the identity assurance mechanism, because the thing they do very well at the moment is they assure identification. They assure the identity of the individuals and organisations that are working with them, because you can't actually have a bank account unless you've been anti-money laundering checked, unless they know who you are, they have references, they have all kinds of bits and pieces on you, so they're very good at assuring identity. And the future of most of what we're talking about is going to be around digital identity, assured identity that allows us to transact seamlessly. I know you, I can see you, someone over there is telling me that you are who you are, and therefore I trust you. And I think that's the fundamental function of a bank, but that's in the distant future.
So it sounds like digital identity really is the future. Who are the key thought leaders in this space?
Well, there's no doubt that the Estonians are doing very well. I mean, Denmark we are here in Denmark, they have a digital identity framework, and citizens here are issued with an assured digital identity. But really, to me, Estonia has done something very different, because it's recognised that digital identity is in fact digital rather than national, and therefore they have allowed it through to a wider framework of people. In other words, what you can do as a non-Estonian citizen is you can have a digital identity too. I mean, I have one, if I can find one, it's in my wallet. So I have this, I applied for it, they positively vetted me and they gave me this, which is actually assured by a blockchain identity and allows me access to a range of services in Estonia and even outside of Estonia that are part of this Estonian framework. So really Estonia is the cutting edge. It should come as no surprise that in the European Commission, the Commissioner for Single Digital Markets is Andrus Ansip, who is an Estonian, and his Chief of Staff is also an Estonian. So the Estonians are very much at the heart of the digital identity framework that's being created within Europe.
So do fintech entrepreneurs have a real role in reforming payments and capital markets?
Yes, they do, absolutely. I mean, it's very hard sometimes for big institutions to innovate. And so therefore they are actively looking outside of their marketplace for innovation. But that's not the only way. I'm going to create a word for you now. Not entrepreneur, but intrapreneur. And the word intrapreneur is something I thought of just now when I was talking to a good friend of mine called Mike Halsall. Mike Halsall runs Singularity University in the UK, and he creates a series of grand challenges. And grand challenges are questions that he asks communities And often it's a very open question, how would you solve this problem? And you get lots of people applying from within and without of a community, outside of a community, to try and answer it in an innovative way. And if you win the competition, you go to Singularity University, which I won't go into now, but is a fantastic place. But he did one recently that was very interesting. So rather than asking a question like, how would you reform the building industry? And lots of people apply from within and outside of the industry. What he did was he went to the UK Civil Service, and he asked to this closed community, which is very large. I mean, it's somewhat shy of 1 million people. He asked this constituency, what would you do differently in your job? And he was sponsored by BIS, he was sponsored by Government Office for Science to do this, and he got an overwhelming response. So the competition was judged yesterday, the winners have been announced, I think you can find the winners online, and 2 people from the winning team are going to be going to Singularity University in Palo Alto. It's a fantastic place. But the point is, he asked this closed group, and what he did was he encouraged that group to think about their internal business models, as diverse as they were: buildings, autonomous cars, child protection, food standards agency, defence. All of these groups started to answer questions about their own constituency. And this is entrepreneurship. It's asking an internal community. Now, banks, for example, are looking very hard outside of their communities to try and answer difficult questions about payments and capital markets. Historically, they have probably pretty inefficiently asked internally through suggestion boxes what's going on. But I think this model of asking people who actually work in the business, where do the problems lie and how do you solve them, what would you suggest, be creative, and then sponsoring them through this process of developing their ideas is what I would describe as entrepreneurship. I think it's a different model. It's not one that we see. I mean, we've had a conference today where most of the entrepreneurs were people from outside the sector, payments people coming from the digital space. Well, let's start asking the communities. Let's start asking the organisations themselves, where are your problems? Because I have a feeling that there are people within most of those organisations who can help answer those questions.
Chris, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And thank you for watching.